The Aeneid, by Virgil, Book 1. I sing of arms, and the man who first came from the shores of Troy to Italy, a refugee by fate, arriving at the Lavinian shores, much tossed about on land and sea by the power of the gods, due to the relentless wrath of cruel Juno. He suffered greatly in war, until he founded a city, and brought his gods to Latium, from which arose the Latin race, the Alban fathers, and the walls of lofty Rome. O Muse, recount to me the reasons, by what divine will injured, or what grief, did the Queen of the Gods drive a man famed for his piety to endure so many misfortunes, and to face so many hardships? Can there be such anger in the hearts of the celestial gods? There was an ancient city, Carthage, held by settlers from Tyre, facing Italy and the Tiber's mouth, rich in resources and fierce in the pursuit of war. Juno is said to have cherished this city more than any other, even more than Samos. Here were her arms, and here her chariot. The goddess aimed and cherished that Carthage should rule over the nations if only the fates allowed. But she had heard that a race, descended from Trojan blood, would one day overthrow the Tyrian stronghold, a people who would come to rule far and wide and bring about the downfall of Libya. Thus, the fates had ordained. Fearing this, and mindful of the old war she had waged at Troy for her dear Argos, the cause of her anger and her bitter sorrow had not yet faded from her mind. The judgment of Paris, the injury to her spurned beauty, the hated race, and the honors of the abducted Ganymede remained deeply fixed in her heart. Inflamed by these thoughts, she kept the Trojans, the remnants of the Greeks, and cruel Achilles, far from Latium, driven by fate, wandering the seas for many years. Such was the task of founding the Roman race. Hardly out of sight of Sicilian land, they joyfully spread their sails to the deep, and they were ploughing the foaming brine with their bronze prows when Juno, nursing an eternal wound in her heart, spoke to herself. Am I to cease my efforts, defeated, unable to turn the king of the Teucrians away from Italy? Surely I am forbidden by the fates. Wasn't Pallas able to burn the Argive fleet and submerge the Greeks in the sea, because of the guilt and madness of a single man, Ajax, son of Oileus? She herself, hurling Jove's swift fire from the clouds, scattered their ships and overturned the seas with tempests. She snatched him up in a whirlwind as he breathed out flames from his pierced chest and impaled him on a sharp rock. Yet I, who walk as queen of the gods, sister and wife of Jove, have been waging war for many years against a single race. And will anyone still worship Juno's power or place offerings on my altars as a suppliant? Turning these thoughts over in her inflamed heart, the goddess came to Olia, the homeland of storms, teeming with raging southern winds. Here, in a vast cave, King Aeolus keeps the struggling winds and loud storms under control, curbing them with chains and imprisonment. They murmur angrily at the barriers, with a great roar around the mountain. Aeolus sits enthroned, holding his scepter, and soothes their spirits and tempers their anger. Without his control, they would surely sweep away the seas, lands, and the deep sky with them, driving them through the air. But the omnipotent Father, fearing this, has hidden them in dark caves, and placed over them a mass and high mountains, and set a king to rule them with a firm command, to restrain or release them as ordered. To him, Juno, as a suppliant, spoke these words: Aeolus, for to you the Father of gods and King of men has given the power to calm the waves and raise them with the wind. A people hateful to me sails the Tyrrhenian Sea, bringing Ilium and its conquered gods to Italy. Strike force into the winds and overwhelm their sunken ships, or drive them apart and scatter their bodies across the sea. I have 14 nymphs of surpassing beauty, of whom the most beautiful Deiopeia I will join to you in lasting marriage and dedicate as your own, so that for such services she will spend all her years with you and make you the father of beautiful offspring." Aeolus replied, "O Queen, your task is to decide what you wish. It is my duty to fulfill your commands. You give me whatever power I have. You win me the favor of Jove. You allow me to recline at the feasts of the gods, and you make me lord of the storms and tempests." When these words were spoken, he struck the hollow mountain on its side with his spear. The winds, as if forming a column, rushed out through the open gate and swept over the lands in a whirlwind. They brooded over the sea, and the east and south winds together, thick with storms, churned the vast waves to the shores. Then came the roar of men and the creaking of ropes. Suddenly clouds snatched the sky and daylight from the eyes of the Trojans. Black night brooded over the sea. The heavens thundered, and the sky flashed with frequent lightning, and all things seemed to threaten immediate death to the men. Immediately Aeneas's limbs grew cold with fear. He groaned, and holding his hands to the stars, uttered such words: "O 3 and 4 times blessed, whose fate it was to meet death before their father's eyes under the high walls of Troy. O son of Tydeus, bravest of the race of Greeks, could I not have fallen on the Trojan plains and poured out this life at your right hand, where fierce Hector lies by the spear of Achilles, where huge Sarpedon lies, where the Simois rolls beneath its waves, so many shields, helmets, and brave bodies snatched away." As he hurled such words, a shrieking gust from the north struck the sail full on, raising the waves to the stars. The oars shattered, then the prow turned and exposed its side to the waves, and a steep mountain of water followed in a mass. Some men hung on the wave's crest. For others, the yawning wave opened the sea floor among the surging sands. The south wind snatched 3 ships and dashed them onto hidden rocks. The Italians call them the altars, an immense ridge rising in mid-sea, and 3 ships the east wind drove from the deep into shallow waters and sandbanks, a pitiable sight, striking them on the shoals and encircling them with a wall of sand. One ship, which carried the faithful Orontes and the Lycians, before Aeneas's eyes, a huge wave from above struck on the stern. The helmsman was hurled overboard headlong, and the ship spun 3 times on the same spot, and was swallowed by the swift whirlpool. Few men swam in the vast abyss, scattered among the waves, the arms of men, planks, and Trojan wealth. Now the storm had conquered the strong ship of Ilioneus, the ship of brave Achates, and that which carried Abas, and that which aged Aletes. All the ships received hostile waves through the loosened joints of their sides, and split open with fissures. Meanwhile Neptune perceived the sea churned with a vast murmur, and the storm unleashed, and the still waters poured from the lowest depths, greatly troubled. And looking out over the deep, he raised his serene head from the wave. He saw the fleet of Aeneas scattered over the sea, the Trojans overwhelmed by the waves and the falling heavens, nor did the deceits and anger of Juno escape her brother. He called the east and west winds to him, and then spoke such words: "Is such confidence in your birth seized you? Do you dare, without my command, to mix the sky and the land, and raise such mighty masses? Whom I? But it is better to calm the troubled waves. Hereafter you will atone for your crimes with a different punishment. Speed your flight, and tell your king this: not to him was the command of the sea and the savage trident given, but to me by lot. He holds the immense rocks, your homes, East wind, let Aeolus vaunt himself in that hall and rule in the closed prison of the winds. Thus he spoke, and quicker than his word, he calms the swollen seas and puts to flight the gathered clouds, bringing back the sun. Cymotho and Triton together, striving, thrust the ships from the sharp rock. He himself raises them with his trident, opens the vast sandbanks, and calms the sea, and glides over the tops of the waves with light wheels. Just as often happens when a riot has arisen among a great people, and the base mob rages in their spirits, and now firebrands and stones fly, fury supplying arms. Then if by chance they have seen a man revered for piety and merit, they are silent and stand by with attentive ears. He rules their spirits with his words and soothes their breasts. So the whole clamor of the sea subsided after the father, gazing over the waters and driving his horses, flying on his chariot, gave the reins to the willing chariot. The tired followers of Aeneas hastened to seek the nearest shores by their course, and turned to the coast of Libya. There is a place in a long inlet. An island forms a harbor with the barrier of its sides, against which every wave from the deep breaks and divides itself into the curved recesses. From this side and that, vast cliffs and twin rocks loom into the sky, beneath whose summit the safe seas are wide and silent. Then above, a scene of shimmering woods and a dark grove overhangs with bristling shadow. Beneath the opposite face, a cave with hanging rocks. Inside are fresh waters and seats of living stone, the home of nymphs. Here no chains hold weary ships, no anchor bites with curved fluke. Here Aeneas enters with 7 ships gathered from all his fleet. With a great longing for land, the Trojans, disembarking, gain the desired sands, and lay their salt-encrusted limbs on the shore. At once, Aeneas strikes a spark from the flint, catches the fire with leaves, places dry fuel around, and quickly kindles the flame in the tinder. Then, worn out with their trials, they bring out Ceres, spoiled by the waves, and the utensils of Ceres, and prepare to roast the salvaged grain over the flames and crush it with stone. Meanwhile, Aeneas climbs a cliff and seeks a wide view over the sea, hoping to see some glimpse of Antheus tossed by the wind and the Phrygian galleys, or Capys, or the arms of Caicus on the high stern. No ship in sight. He perceives 3 stags wandering on the shore. The whole herd follows these from behind, and the long line grazes through the valleys. He halted here, and seized his bow and swift arrows in his hand, the weapons carried by faithful Achates. First he strikes the leaders themselves, bearing their heads high with branching antlers. Then he scatters the crowd, driving them with his arrows among the leafy groves. Nor does he cease, until he lays low 7 huge bodies on the ground, equaling the number of his ships. Then he seeks the harbor, and distributes them among all his companions. Next, he shares the wine which good Acestes had loaded in jars on the Sicilian shore, and had given to them at their departure, and with words he soothes their grieving hearts. O comrades, for we are not unaware of troubles before, O you who have endured heavier trials, the god will grant an end to these as well. You have approached the fury of Scylla and her deep-sounding cliffs. You have experienced the rocks of the Cyclopes. Recall your courage and banish mournful fear. Perhaps one day you will even take pleasure in remembering these things. Through diverse misfortunes, through so many crises, we strive towards Latium, where the fates promise us peaceful homes. There it is granted that the realm of Troy shall rise again, endure, and save yourselves for favorable times. Such words he spoke, and though sick with great cares, he feigned hope on his face, and suppressed deep grief in his heart. They prepare for the feast and the future banquet. They strip the hides from the ribs and lay bare the entrails. Some cut the flesh into pieces and fix them on spits. Others set up bronze cauldrons on the shore and tend the flames. Then they restore their strength with food, and stretched out on the grass, they are filled with old wine and rich venison. After hunger had been driven away and the tables removed, they lament the loss of their companions in long conversation, doubtful between hope and fear, whether they should believe them alive or enduring the final doom, and now incapable of hearing their call. Above all, pious Aeneas now laments the fate of keen Orontes, now of Amycus, and the cruel fate of Lycus, and brave Gaius, and brave Cloanthus. And now it was the end, when Jove, looking down from the highest heaven on the sail-winged sea, and the lands lying below, and the shores and the wide-spread peoples, stood on the summit of heaven, and fixed his gaze on the kingdoms of Libya. And as he pondered such cares in his heart, sadder, her shining eyes filled with tears, Venus spoke to him. O you who rule the affairs of men and gods with eternal power, and terrify with your thunderbolt, what great offense has my Aeneas committed against you? What could the Trojans have done, who have endured so many deaths, that all the world is closed against them, because of Italy? Surely you promised that from them, one day, as the years roll by, would arise the Romans, from the restored blood of Teucer, who would hold the sea and all lands in their power. What thought, Father, has changed your mind? This was my consolation for the fall of Troy and its sad ruins, balancing opposing fates with fates. Now the same fortune pursues men driven by so many disasters. What end do you give, great king, to their trials? Antenor could escape the Achaeans in the midst, and safely penetrate the Illyrian gulfs and the heart of the Liburnian realms, and surpass the source of the Timavus, from which, through 9 mouths, with vast murmurs of the mountain, it bursts forth and covers the fields with its resounding flood. Yet here he founded the city of Patavium, and settled the Teucrian race, gave a name to his people, and hung up the arms of Troy. Now he rests in tranquil peace. But we, your offspring, to whom you promised the citadel of heaven, with our ships lost, shameful, by one person's anger, we are betrayed and kept far from the Italian shores. Is this the reward of piety? Is this how you restore us to sovereignty? The father of men and gods, smiling on her, with that look which clears the sky and tempests, kissed his daughter's lips, then spoke these words. Spare your fear, Cytherea. Your people's fate remains unchanged. You will see the city and the promised walls of Lavinium, and you will carry your great-hearted Aeneas aloft to the stars of heaven. No thought has changed my mind. He will wage a great war in Italy, crush fierce nations, and establish customs and walls for his people, until a 3rd summer has seen him reigning in Latium, and 3 winters have passed since the Rutulians were subdued. But the boy Ascanius, to whom the name Iulus is now added, Ilus he was, while the Ilian state stood in power, will complete 30 great years in full circles of months, and will transfer his kingdom from the seat of Lavinium and fortify Alba Longa with great power. Here the Hectorian race will reign for 300 full years, until a priestess queen, pregnant by Mars, shall give birth to twin offspring. Then Romulus, joyful in the tawny hide of his nurse the she-wolf, shall inherit the people, and found the walls of Mars, and call them Romans from his own name. To these I set no bounds in space or time. I have given them empire without end. Even fierce Juno, who now harasses the sea and land and sky with her fear, will change her mind to better counsels, and with me will cherish the Romans, masters of the world and the toga-clad people. Thus it is decreed. A time will come, with the lapse of the ages, when the house of Assaracus will press in servitude upon Phthia and renowned Mycenae, and will conquer the Argive people. From this glorious origin shall be born a Trojan Caesar, who will extend his empire to the ocean, his fame to the stars, Julius, a name descended from great Iulus. This man you shall one day receive in heaven, burdened with the spoils of the East. He also will be called upon in vows. Then, with wars laid aside, the harsh ages will grow mild. White-haired Faith and Vesta and Quirinus, with his brother Remus, will give laws. The gates of war, grim with iron and close-fitting bars, will be closed. Inside, impious rage, sitting on savage arms, his hands bound behind with 100 knots of brass, will roar horribly with his blood-stained mouth. He said this, and sent down the son of Maia from on high to open the lands and towers of Carthage to the Trojans, so that Dido, unaware of destiny, would not drive them from her borders. He flew through the vast air with the beating of his wings, and swiftly stood on the shores of Libya. And now he carried out his orders, and the Carthaginians, by the will of the god, laid aside their fierce hearts. Especially the queen received a peaceful spirit and kind mind toward the Trojans. But pious Aeneas, pondering many things through the night, as soon as kindly light was given, determined to go out and explore the new places, to find out what coasts he had come to, by the wind, who dwelt there, men or beasts, for he saw the land was uncultivated, and to report what he had learned to his comrades. He hid the fleet in a hollow of the grove beneath a hollowed rock, surrounded by trees and bristling shadows. He himself advanced, accompanied only by Achates, brandishing 2 spears tipped with broad iron. His mother presented herself to him in the middle of the forest, wearing the face and dress of a maiden and carrying the arms of a Spartan girl, or like Harpalus, the Thracian girl, who tires out horses and outstrips the swift Hebrus in her flight. For she had hung her bow from her shoulders in the custom of a huntress, and had given her hair to the winds to scatter, bare at the knee, her flowing robe gathered in a knot. She spoke first. "Hey, young men, did you happen to see any of my sisters wandering here, girded with a quiver, and wearing the hide of a dappled lynx, or chasing a foaming boar with a shout?" Thus Venus spoke, and thus her son replied, "None of your sisters has been seen or heard by me. Oh, how should I address you, maiden? For you do not have a mortal's face, nor does your voice sound human. Oh, surely you are a goddess. Are you Phoebus's sister, or one of the blood of the nymphs? Be gracious, and lighten our labor, whoever you are, and tell us under what sky we are cast, on what shores of the world we are tossed. We wander, ignorant of men and places, driven here by the wind and the vast waves. Many victims will fall before your altars by our right hand." Then Venus, "Indeed, I do not think myself worthy of such honor. It is the custom for Tyrian maidens to carry a quiver and bind their calves high with a purple boot. You see the Punic kingdom, Tyrians, and the city of Agenor, but the land is Libyan, a people ungovernable in war. Dido rules the kingdom, having fled from her brother, coming from the city of Tyre. The tale of her wrong is long, and the wandering long, but I will follow the main points of the story. Her husband was Sychaeus, richest of the Phoenicians in land, and greatly loved by the wretched woman, to whom her father had given her untouched, and had joined her with the first omens. But her brother Pygmalion, who held the kingdom of Tyre, was more monstrous in crime than all others. Between these two came a mad passion. The impious one, before the altars and blinded by love of gold, secretly overcame Sychaeus with a sword, unaware, without fear for his sister's love. He concealed the deed for a long time, and with evil pretenses and vain hopes deceived the grieving lover. But in her sleep came the ghost of her unburied husband, lifting his pale face in wondrous ways. He laid bare the cruel altars and his chest pierced by the sword, and revealed all the hidden crime of the house. Then he urged her to hasten her flight and leave her homeland, and as aid for the journey, revealed ancient treasures hidden in the earth, an unknown weight of silver and gold. Moved by these things, Dido prepared her flight and gathered companions, those whom either cruel hatred of the tyrant or sharp fear held. They seized ships which were ready by chance and loaded them with gold. The riches of greedy Pygmalion were carried overseas. A woman led the deed. They arrived at the places where now you see the vast walls and the rising citadel of New Carthage, and bought land, named Byrsa, from the deed, as much as they could encircle with a bull's hide. But you, who are you? From what shores do you come? Or where are you heading? Sighing deeply, he answered her questions. O goddess, if I were to retrace from the first beginning, and had the leisure to hear the annals of our labors, sooner would the evening star close the day and settle Olympus. From ancient Troy, if by chance the name of Troy has come to your ears, driven over various seas, a storm at last has brought us to the Libyan shores. I am Aeneas, known for my piety, who carry with me in my fleet the gods of my household, saved from the enemy. My fame is known above the sky. I seek Italy, my homeland, and a people descended from Jove supreme. With 20 ships I climbed the Phrygian sea, following the fates given me, guided by my goddess mother. Barely 7 survive, shattered by waves and the north wind. I myself, unknown, needy, wander the deserts of Libya, driven from Europe and Asia. No more did Venus allow him to complain, but she interrupted him in the midst of his grief with these words: "Whoever you are, not hated by the gods, I believe, do you breathe vital air, who have come to the Tyrian city. Go on, and take yourself to the queen's threshold, for I announce to you the return of your comrades, and your fleet, brought back and driven to safety by shifted north winds, unless my parents taught me augury in vain. Look at the 12 swans, rejoicing in a long line, which an eagle from the open sky was troubling. Now in a long line, they seem to either seize the land or already look down on the captured land. Just so your ships and your youthful crew either hold the harbor or enter its mouths with full sail. Go on, and direct your steps as the way leads you." She spoke, and turning, her rosy neck shone, her divine hair breathed a heavenly fragrance, her garments flowed down to her feet, and by her gait she revealed herself as a true goddess. He recognized his mother as she fled, and followed her with such words: "Why do you so often mock your son with false images, cruel as you are? Why is it not allowed to join right hand to right hand, and to hear and return true voices?" With such complaints, he directed his steps toward the walls. But Venus enveloped them as they went with a thick cloud, and she spread a vast shroud of mist around them, so that no one could see them, touch them, delay them, or demand the reasons for their coming. She herself, joyful, revisited Paphos and her seats, where her temple and 100 altars smoked with Sabaean incense, fragrant with fresh garlands. Meanwhile they took the path where the way pointed, and now they climbed the hill which looms over the city and looks down on the citadel from above. Aeneas marveled at the vast structure, once huts, marveled at the gates, the noise, and the paved roads. The eager Tyrians were pressing on, some to raise the walls, to build the citadel, and to roll up stones by hand, others to choose a site for a house and enclose it with a furrow. They are choosing laws, magistrates, and a sacred senate. Here some are digging a harbor, there others are laying the deep foundations for a theater and carving huge columns from the rocks, high decorations for future stages. Just like when bees in early summer, under the sun, work in the flowery fields, when they bring out the grown young of the race, or when they pack liquid honey and swell the cells with sweet nectar, or receive the loads of those coming in, or with a formed column drive the lazy drones from the hives. The work seethes, and the fragrant honey smells of time. O fortunate ones, whose walls now rise, Aeneas said, looking up at the city's heights. Enveloped in mist, he entered the midst of them, mingled with the men, yet unseen by any. In the center of the city was a grove, joyful with shade, where the Phoenicians, tossed by the waves and the storm, first dug up a sign, which queenly Juno had pointed out, a fierce horse's head. Thus they were destined to be outstanding in war and prosperous in sustenance through the ages. Here Sidonian Dido was founding a vast temple to Juno, rich with offerings and the divine presence, with steps rising from bronze thresholds and beams fastened with bronze, the doors creaking on bronze hinges. Here for the first time, a new sight allayed his fear. Here for the first time, Aeneas dared to hope for safety and trust more in his shattered fortunes. For while he surveys each detail under the vast temple, waiting for the queen, while he marvels at the city's fortune, the work of the artisans and their labors, he sees the battles of Troy in their order, the fame of the war spread through the world, the sons of Atreus, Priam, and Achilles, who was savage to both. He halted and weeping said, "What place is now Achates? What region on earth is not full of our hardships? Look, Priam, even here are rewards for virtue. There are tears for human misfortunes, and mortal sorrows touch the heart. Dispel your fears. This fame will bring some salvation to you." So he spoke, and feasted his mind on the empty picture, sighing much, and wet his face with a copious stream of tears. For he saw how the Greeks fled around the walls of Troy, the Trojan youth pressed, here the Greeks fled, and there the crest-topped Achilles pressed with his chariot. Not far from here he recognized, weeping, the tents of Rhesus, covered with snow-white canvas, which betrayed by a first sleep, the bloodthirsty son of Tydeus devastated with great slaughter, and drove away the fiery horses to the camp before they tasted the pastures of Troy, or drank from the Xanthus. In another part, Troilus, his arms lost, the unhappy boy, and unequal in battle with Achilles, was being dragged by his horses, hanging backward from his empty chariot, still holding the reins. His neck and hair were being dragged on the ground, and the dust was inscribed with his reversed spear. Meanwhile the Trojan women were going, with disheveled hair and bearing the peplum suppliants, to the temple of unkind Pallas, sad and beating their breasts with their palms. The goddess kept her eyes fixed on the ground, turned away. Thrice around the walls of Troy had Achilles dragged Hector, and was selling his lifeless body for gold. Then indeed a great groan rose from the depths of his heart, when he saw the spoils, the chariot, and the lifeless body of his friend, and Priam stretching out his unarmed hands. He also recognized himself mingling with the Greek leaders, the eastern armies, and the arms of black Memnon. Leading the ranks of the Amazons with crescent-shaped shields was Penthesilea, raging, and she burned among the thousands, fastening a golden belt beneath her exposed breast, a warrior queen daring to fight with men. While these marvelous sights captivated Aeneas, while he stood and stared fixedly, the queen, Dido, most beautiful in form, approached the temple, with a large crowd of youths thronging around her. Just like Diana on the banks of the Eurotas, or along the ridges of Cynthus, leading her dancers, whom 1,000 nymphs follow on either side, she bears a quiver on her shoulder, and as she walks, towers above all the goddesses. Joys thrill Latona's silent heart. Such was Dido, so she carried herself joyfully among them, urging on the work and her future kingdom. Then at the temple's threshold, in the middle of the dome, surrounded by arms, she sat on a high throne. She gave laws and ordinances to her people, and equaled the labor of the tasks in fair shares, or drew them by lot. When suddenly Aeneas saw Antheus, Sergestus, brave Cloanthus, and others of the Trojans, whom a black storm had driven far over the sea and carried to other shores, approaching with a great crowd, he stood amazed, and both Achates, stunned by joy and fear, burned with longing to join hands. But the unexpected sight disturbed their spirits. They concealed their longing, veiled in the cloud, watching to see what fortune the men had, on what shore they left their fleet, and why they came. For they went, chosen from all the ships, begging for mercy and shouting to the temple. When they entered and were given the chance to speak face to face, the eldest, Ilioneus, began with calm heart. O Queen, to whom Jove has granted to found a new city and curb proud nations with justice, we, the Trojans, driven by the winds over all the seas, beg you, keep the unutterable flames from our ships, spare a pious people, and look more kindly on our plight. We have not come to plunder Libyan households with the sword, or to drive away stolen booty to the shore. Such violence is not in our hearts, nor is there such great pride in the conquered. There is a place called Hesperia by the Greeks, an ancient land, mighty in arms and rich in soil. The Onotrians inhabited it. Now the fame is that their descendants call it Italy, from their leader's name. This was our course, when suddenly rising waves and stormy Orion drove us to blind shoals, and the south winds scattered us with their wild gales, forcing us over the waves and trackless rocks. Here we few have drifted to your shores. What race of men is this, or what so barbarous a country allows this custom? We are denied the shelter of the beach. They stir up wars, and forbid us to set foot on the first land. If you scorn the human race and mortal weapons, yet hope that the gods are mindful of right and wrong. Aeneas was our king, the justest, and no other was greater in piety, nor in war and arms. If the fates preserve this man, if he breathes the air of heaven and does not yet lie among the cruel shades, we have no fear, nor would it shame you to vie in kindness first. There are cities and fields in the regions of Sicily, and famous Acestes of Trojan blood. Let us beach our storm-tossed fleet, and trim the beams and oars in the woods. If we are allowed to reach Italy, and our fated land with our king and comrades, gladly we shall seek Italy and Latium. But if our salvation is lost, and you, O best father of the Trojans, the Libyan sea holds, and no hope remains for Iulus, let us at least seek the straits of Sicily and the prepared seats whence we were driven, and seek our king, Acestes. With such words Ilioneus spoke, and all the sons of Dardanus murmured assent. Then briefly Dido, lowering her gaze, replied, "Banish fear from your hearts, Trojans, and put aside your cares. Harsh necessity and the newness of my kingdom compel me to take such measures and protect my frontiers far and wide. Who does not know the race of Aeneas, the city of Troy, and its heroes and wars? We Phoenicians do not bear hearts so dull, nor does the sun yoke his horses so far from the Tyrian city. Whether you choose the great Hesperia and Saturnian fields, or the lands of Eryx and King Acestes, I will send you safely and aid you with resources. Or do you wish to settle equally in this kingdom with me? The city I build is yours. Beach your ships. Trojan and Tyrian will be treated alike by me. Would that Aeneas himself, driven by the same south wind, were here. Indeed, I will send out reliable messengers along the shore and order them to scour the farthest reaches of Libya, if he is wandering in some forest or city. With these words, the brave Achates and Father Aeneas, eager to break from the cloud, had long been burning. Achates first addressed Aeneas, "Son of the goddess, what thought now rises in your mind? You see all is safe, your fleet and comrades restored. One man is missing, whom we saw submerged in the midst of the waves. The rest of your mother's words come true." Scarcely had he spoken when the cloud around them suddenly parted and cleared into the open sky. Aeneas stood revealed in the clear light, like a god in his appearance, for his mother had breathed on him graceful locks, a youthful glow, and a joyful brilliance in his eyes, such as the hands add grace to ivory, or when silver or Parian marble is encircled with gold. Then he addressed the queen, and suddenly said, unlooked for, "Here I am, Aeneas of Troy, snatched from the Libyan waves. O you who alone have pitied the unutterable misfortunes of Troy, who now welcome us, the remnants of the Greeks, exhausted by all the calamities of land and sea, destitute of everything, in your city and home. To offer fitting thanks is beyond our power, Dido, and beyond all that exists of the Dardan race, scattered throughout the world. May the gods, if any divinities regard the pious, if any justice anywhere looks down on such things, bring you worthy rewards. What ages bore you, so happy? What parents so illustrious brought you forth? While rivers run to the sea, while shadows pass over the mountains, while the sky feeds the stars, your honor, your name, and your praises will endure, wherever fate calls me." So he spoke, and sought the right hand of his friend Ilioneus, and Serestus with his left hand, and then the brave Gyas, and brave Cloanthus. Sidonian Dido was stunned at first sight of the hero, and at the great misfortune of the man, and she spoke thus, "What fate pursues you through such perils? What force drives you to these savage shores? Are you the Aeneas, whom the kind Venus bore to Trojan Anchises by the stream of Simois? I remember that Teucer came to Sidon, driven from his native land, seeking new realms with the aid of Belus. My father Balus was then devastating rich Cyprus and holding it in victory. From that time, the misfortune of Troy and your name and the Greek kings were known to me. Teucer himself often praised the Trojans with great glory, and claimed that he was sprung from their ancient stock. Therefore, young men, come, enter my house. My fortune, tossed by many similar trials, has willed me to rest at last on this land. Not ignorant of misfortune, I have learned to help the miserable." Thus she spoke, and led Aeneas into her royal home, and at the same time proclaimed honors in the temples of the gods. Meanwhile she sent to the shore 20 bulls, 100 bristling backs of great swine, 100 fat lambs with their mothers, as gifts and joy for the gods. Inside her palace was being prepared with regal luxury, and they were making ready the feast in the midst of the house. Embroidered cloths, worked with proud purple, vast silver on the tables, and deeds of her fathers, engraved in gold. A long series of events, drawn through many heroes from the beginning of her race. Aeneas, for love of his son, Ascanius did not allow his mind to rest, sent Achates to the ships in haste, to bring these gifts to the boy and guide him to the city. All the father's care was centered on Aeneas. He ordered to be brought other gifts as well, saved from the ruins of Troy, a mantle stiff with gold embroidery, and a veil bordered with yellow acanthus, once worn by Argive Helen, brought from Mycenae. When she sought forbidden nuptials at Troy, a wondrous gift from her mother Leda, a scepter, once borne by Ilione, the eldest daughter of Priam, a beaded necklace and a double crown of gold and jewels. Achates, hurrying, made his way to the ships, but Cytherea, pondering new schemes and designs in her heart, that Cupid, changed in face and appearance, should come in the guise of sweet Ascanius and inflame the queen with gifts and entwine her with passion in her bones. For she feared the deceptive house and the double-tongued Tyrians. Fierce Juno burned, and her care recurred in the night. Therefore she addressed Cupid with these words: "My son, my strength, my great power alone, you who scorn the Typhoean bolts of the Supreme Father, to you I come, and humbly seek your divine help. Your brother Aeneas, tossed by the hatred of unjust Juno, is cast about all the shores of the sea. You know it, and have grieved at our grief many times. Him Phoenician Dido holds and delays with kind words. I fear where the hospitality of Juno will lead. At such a critical time, she will not rest. Therefore I plan to seize the queen first by guile and encircle her with flames, so that she cannot change by any divine influence, but is held by great love for Aeneas. Listen to my plan for doing this." The royal boy, summoned by his dear father, prepares to go to the Sidonian city, my greatest care, bringing gifts saved from the flames of Troy. I will lull him to sleep and hide him in the sacred grove of Cythera, or high on Idalium, so that he may not know the deceit or come in the midst. You, for one night only, deceive with your disguise and wear the familiar face of the boy, so that when the joyful Dido receives you in her bosom amid the royal feasts and wine of Bacchus, when she gives embraces and imprints sweet kisses, you may breathe secret fire into her and deceive her with your poison." Love obeyed the words of his dear mother and shed his wings and walked joyfully in the form of Iülus. But Venus poured soothing rest over Ascanius's limbs, and holding him in her bosom, carried him to the high groves of Idalia, where soft marjoram embraced him with flowers and fragrant shade. Now, obedient to his orders, Cupid brought the royal gifts to the Tyrians, led by the happy Achates. When he came, the queen had already composed herself on a golden couch in the midst of the splendid hangings. Now Father Aeneas and the Trojan youth assembled, and they reclined on the spread purple cloth. Servants poured water over their hands, served Ceres in baskets, and brought smooth towels. 50 maids inside were ordered to arrange the long feast and tend the flames of the household gods. 100 others, and as many boys of equal age, to load the tables with dishes and place the cups. The Tyrians also assembled, ordered to recline on the happy couches. They marveled at the gifts of Aeneas, marveled at Iülus and the god's fiery face and simulated words. They marveled at the cloak and the embroidered veil. Above all, the unhappy Dido, destined for future ruin, could not be satisfied with gazing and burned with love for both the boy and the gifts. He, when he had hung on Aeneas's neck and embraced him, filled with the false love of the father, sought the queen. With his eyes and heart, he clung to her, and sometimes caressed her bosom, unaware of how great a god was insidious to her, and she began to forget Sychaeus and be caught by the living love, long dormant, and her heart unused. After the first quiet of the feast, and the tables were removed, they set up great bowls and crowned the wine. Noise filled the halls, and voices echoed through the vast chambers. Hanging lamps of gold were lit, and torches drove away the night with flames. Here the queen asked for a heavy cup, gemmed and golden, filled it with wine, which Belus and all from Belus used. Then silence was proclaimed throughout the house. Jupiter, for they say you grant laws to guests, make this day joyful for the Tyrians and for those come from Troy, and may our descendants remember it. May Bacchus, giver of joy, and keened Juno be present, and you, Tyrians, celebrate this assembly with favor. She spoke, and with a libation poured on the table, was the first to touch the cup with her lips, then handed it to Bitias, challenging him. He quickly drank the foaming cup and drenched himself with the gold. Others followed in turn. Long-haired Iopas filled the hall with song, taught by great Atlas. He sang of the wandering moon and the sun's toils. Whence came men and beasts? Whence rain and fire? Arcturus, the rainy Hyades, and the twin bears. Why winter suns hasten to dip in the ocean, or what delays the slow nights? The Tyrians redoubled their applause, and the Trojans followed. Unhappy Dido prolonged the night with varied talk, drinking long draughts of love, asking much about Priam and much about Hector, now of what arms came Aurora's son, now of Diomedes' horses, now of how great was Achilles. Come, tell us from the beginning, guest, the treachery of the Greeks, your people's misfortunes, and your own wanderings. For now, the 7th summer carries you, wandering over all the lands and seas.